Welcome back to everyone that has joined today's session. This is the Revenue Governor. I am April, your host. And up to this point, if you've been here, we have examined behavior deeply. We worked through hesitation, what softened standards look like, and delayed enforcement. Today, what we are doing is analyzing moments, and we start by analyzing systems. Because patterns don't repeat by accident. They repeat because something in the structure allows them to. If those earlier episodes felt familiar, you're not dealing with personality. You are dealing with architecture. And when architecture is misaligned, you have the governance gap. A governance gap is the distance between what leadership communicates and what the organization experiences as real. Let me say that again, but just differently. It's the gap between declared expectations and reinforced expectations. Reinforced expectations always win. Always. Don't forget that. You can say we hold a high bar, but if someone misses that bar, nothing changes. The real bar just moved, regardless of if you like it or not. That governance drift is in motion. Here's why this is so dangerous. Governance gaps are invisible in strong quarters. They hide inside success. Revenue can grow while standards are weakening. Performance can increase while structure is destabilizing. You won't even see it on the dashboard. What you will do is feel it in your effort. There'll be more explanation, more context, more just this once or please, not this week. Usually it's when leaders say, I don't know why this feels so much harder. Should it be? That, my friends, is the signal. Here's the thing though. That signal starts small. You might adjust a target, not because it's strategic, because it's uncomfortable, or you'll soften your feedback, not because it's inaccurate, because you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. You find yourself softening it because you don't want resistance. You let something pass. You let multiple things pass, not because it's acceptable or because you believe they should pass, but because timing just feels off. Every one of these moments is understandable. You are human. But here is my question. Did you reset the expectation afterward? Or did the new behavior quietly become the new standard? Because standards don't erode dramatically. They normalize very subtly. Picture yourself. You're in a pipeline review. You've said that qualification matters. You've said you need multi-threading and it's required. You've said there needs to be clarity in the timeline. That is essential. And then the rep comes to you and presents a deal. There is no confirmed budget, no decision-making engagement, optimistic close date, and you literally let it stand. You don't push, you don't clarify, you move on. What in the world just happened? You trained the team, literally. Qualification is optional if confidence is high. That, my friends, is governance shaping behavior in real time. I mean, really think about this. How many times do you find yourself in a meeting with a rep needing to have a very difficult conversation, a blunt conversation, and you just don't do it because you don't want to deal with what comes after? Here's my take. Many leaders believe if they explain expectations clearly, alignment will follow. Guess what? It doesn't. Explanation without reinforcement creates ambiguity. Reinforcement without explanation, well, that creates fear. You need both. But if one must dominate, reinforcement defines structure because humans adapt to patterns, not speeches. Let's get a little bit deeper. When governance gaps widen, top performers notice first. They always notice first. They don't argue. They literally sit there and observe. They calibrate their effort and it's relative to fairness. If consequences are inconsistent, effort then becomes conditional. Middle performers, well, they wait for the signals. Underperformers, though, they test elasticity. This is not malicious. It's literally just rational. Systems create behavior. Here's something few leaders will actually admit. Governance gaps exhaust them. Why? Well, because inconsistency requires constant interpretation. Every situation becomes a special case. Every enforcement conversation, it begins to feel personal. Every correction, well, that feels heavier than it should. That fatigue isn't workload. It is structural instability. When standards are fluid, decisions slow. Why is that? Well, because if enforcement isn't stable, decisions become negotiable. Now leaders seek agreement instead of clarity. Meetings begin to expand. Language, well, that will soften. Momentum, it's decreasing. You call it calibration, but sometimes it's hesitation disguised as an illusion. All right, let's talk about that illusion and what that could look like. You may think your team is aligned. Everyone nods. Everyone is in agreement. But alignment is not verbal consensus. Alignment is behavioral consistency under pressure. If pressure changes behavior, alignment was superficial. It was never real to begin with. Governance gaps expose this, and they expose it quickly. Let's translate this into revenue mechanics. When reinforcement weakens, well, your forecast accuracy decreases. Deal qualifications, they become loose. Urgency starts to decline. Cycles, they expand. You don't even notice this immediately, but you start needing more pipeline for the same outcome. More calls, more intake. That is structural inefficiency. That is not market conditions. And think about it. When is the last time you were in a meeting and you heard another leader talking about the type of leads that you guys were getting? And let's not forget the needing more qualified leads part. Let's talk about the part that leaders often can interpret governance gaps as moral issues. We just need better culture. Maybe they say, we need motivation. We need to give some recognition. Maybe your system lacks consistency. Clarity reduces anxiety. Inconsistency, though, that creates the anxiety to begin with. So now ask yourself, if I enforce this standard tomorrow, exactly what is written? Would anyone be surprised? If your answer is yes, your governance gap is active. Standards, though, they should not shock people when enforced. They should confirm expectations. Don't you want to know what's going on and why? Don't you want to know what is expected of you? That is what your team needs. Governance gaps compound quietly. They increase managerial involvement. They increase interpretive decision-making. They even increase your emotional labor. And we all know the emotional behind you actually being a leader and what that expectation is. Eventually, leadership feels reactive. It's no longer proactive. And that's when growth plateaus. Strong governance feels boring. It can be predictable, clear. Standards are known. Consequences are consistent. Decisions, those are final. No one debates enforcement because enforcement is stable. That stability creates speed, and speed creates confidence. In unstable markets, governance gaps amplify risk because your external pressure is increasing while your internal ambiguity multiplies. And it's multiplying the damage. Strong governance absorbs pressure. Weak governance, though, it magnifies it. This is not a theory. It's operational reality. The governance gap is not a character flaw. It's a structural condition, and structural conditions require structural correction. This week, observe without emotion. Where is there space between what you declare and what your system consistently reinforces? That space is leverage for you, and leverage determines whether your team accelerates or slowly negotiates itself into mediocrity. Either way, don't say I didn't tell you so.